You know, everybody has like that one pair of shoes that you just love. They're so comfortable, right? And I would imagine most of you have a go-to pair of shoes. If you're not forced to wear something nice or something for work, then you might choose these shoes to go pretty much anywhere, whether it's on a hike or out to the park or to a friend's house. These are the shoes that you've worn into the point where you feel comfortable with them. And even though there are other pair that you could choose, perhaps you have a few pair of brand new shoes that you could wear, they just don't feel quite the same. Now you know that if you wear those other shoes for a while, you'll probably break them in to the point where they'll feel comfortable like the shoes you're already wearing. However, you know that eventually the shoes you're wearing are going to fall apart and you will be forced to wear those. So, it might do well to wear them once in a while and gradually wear them in over time, so you're not forced to get used to them all at once. This is like everything in our lives. I just thought, it just popped into my head as the perfect metaphor for the lifestyles that we live, the choices that we make, the chances that we take or don't take, the new risks, the new jobs, moving to a new place. All of these things can be like putting on a new pair of shoes. At first, they just don't feel right. No pair of shoes can ever be made just for you. But eventually, your feet, the parts of your feet, and the way that it's shaped, they force the areas into submission. And it's kind of a symbiotic relationship, I guess, with your feet and these shoes. Now, maybe not symbiotic. I would say it's a one-way. You're a parasite on your shoes, damn it. But you have so many choices in your life. We all do. Things that we can do, new things, new places we can go, new places we can move, new jobs we can take, or even something as simple as just a change of attitude or behavior, or a change of religion. Could be a change of politics, whatever it might be. Often we're afraid to change, not because we don't think we ever will, but because we're willing to put it off until later. Let's say that there's things we know are true in the back of our mind about ourselves and the way we're living our lives, that we just say, well, one more day and I'll fix that problem. It's always tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. You have to force it. And this is no pep talk, believe me, because I'm no inspirational speaker when it comes to this shit, because I suffer from an extreme case of procrastination and lack of responsibility when it comes to basic life things, right? And I acknowledge that, and I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm going to have to make changes and put on new shoes, and I don't want to wear them at first. You know, these are, I'm almost 50. Obviously, I've been living life for a while, but I have some responsibilities on my plate that I need to take care of, and I've never been good at doing that timely. In fact, if I have a bill due or a a fine or something, I'll wait till the very last minute. Maybe even then won't even deal with it, and then end up getting charged more, knowing I'll get charged more, knowing I'll get a late fee or whatever it might be. And it makes me feel bad, but I do it consistently, and I've done it my whole life. Now, I've tried to change this. I've made a lot of mental efforts and put forth intention to, subconsciously and consciously listen to a ton of motivational speeches and podcasts and ideas about getting your shit together, but I just can't seem to do it. Now, my excuse is that I'm not made for this world. In other words, I believe in a very simple life, but I know I can't have that yet. Here's the thing, here's the key. A lot of folks out there want to have a simple life without all the crazy shit to deal with. I'm Gen X, okay? I grew up during a time when we didn't have computers. We had cartoons for a couple hours a day, and after that was gone, you were out skating. I was a skateboarder, I was out till late, doing shit, hanging out, And nowadays, it's easier than ever to slack. You know what I mean? Because we have so many options, so many things that we can. Let's say we have every opportunity right now to do pretty much anything we want. If you live in the United States and you're an able-bodied, conscious human being, you can probably, you know, do a lot for yourself. You know, for example, I guess my YouTube channel. That's a great example. If I had been a little more productive and taken extra time to do a few things, like, let's say I wanted to make a living off of speaking online, which a lot of people do. For me, that's always been, you know, as somebody who grew up in a time when work was work, I feel like now it's this idea of people being, even though I have no intention of being an influencer, that's a totally different thing. I don't use ads or sponsorships because fuck all of that. I'm not gonna put you all through that. It's the bane of my existence is ads. I swear to God, like, there's two things I really despise in this world, and that's traffic and advertisements. It's funny because I can deal with just about anything, you know, physical, mental pain, you know, anxiety. But when it comes to like traffic, I'm getting better at it from being stuck in it all the time. But you never quite get used to it. But yeah, anyway, I guess we're gonna get some sirens for a minute. And this happens regularly on this channel, so it's just all part of the game. I don't do editing. I refuse to do any of that shit. So anyway, that takes me back to the point, which on my YouTube channel, I don't take the extra time to do editing, to do the right hashtags, and, you know, to promote my own videos, that kind of thing. Because when I talk to you, it's off the top of my head. I don't plan these out. It's usually an hour before I have the idea. It's like I may be thinking about ideas over the days, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make a video about this. And I believe and I trust that what comes off the top of my head is often better than anything I could write down. Because when I write something down, I'm really not big on scripts and or listening to people who are reading scripts, obvious scripts. There's a large segment of YouTube who are younger guys. Like, let's say, and this isn't dissing anybody, but I've noticed this repeatedly with I don't know how many dozen channels that I've come across, which the person who has the channel is somewhere between 18 and 25. And their channel is about wisdom and knowledge, and they show, you know, these pictures of esoteric, you know, pictures I've seen a million times of, you know, various alchemy texts and things like this, and, you know, follow them up with either some sort of esoteric wisdom that they believe they know, or the folks who are kind of in the manosphere who are telling you how to be a real man. Those guys get to me. You know, not a lot bothers me. And that's another thing that kind of irritates me besides traffic and shit. It's like dealing with the type of guy who thinks that he looks cool and tough by acting cool and tough. It's maybe a paradox there. It's, you know, the cooler you act, the dumber you look, in my opinion. But I realize that's not the truth for other people, because we're all different. Some people see that as attractive and interesting, but it's like, try too hard, bro, kind of thing. And but more than that, I believe that there's a lot of ignoring what it means to be a man, as far as finding your own truth and following your own path. You see, I'm not big on authority. Big surprise. I'm not big on following what other people tell me or individuals tell me is the best for me. But here's the thing. I am a follower of the rules. Now that's a paradox as well, and this is one I've been analyzing myself for years. I'm a big rule follower, and if I play games, I don't cheat. Now, I realize there are certain exceptions. I might cut into traffic in a place where I shouldn't at the last minute because I get frustrated with traffic and I know I can get around this huge group of cars, right? But I have a rule of thumb. I don't want to inconvenience anybody behind me or in front of me. So if I can get in somewhere and I can safely get in there, then without, inconveniencing other people, because the guy who jumps in front of me without his turn signal and makes me slam on my brakes, fuck that guy. If you're that guy, fuck you. No, I really feel strongly about using the proper etiquette, not just in driving, but in behavior, the way we talk to people. Following the law is more complicated. Since I was young, I've been an anti-authoritarian. Yeah, I smoked weed, and I refused to believe that, it should be illegal. And we've fought for legalization, and guess what? We got it, and I could buy it at the corner store now. But that's because in my heart, I've always known that that was not wrong for me to smoke herb if I chose to. Because that is a law that I know is bullshit. But there are other laws, like don't steal, which are obvious laws, right? Because I don't want to steal from other people. I want to earn what I have, because there are natural laws in place, which you'll learn, no matter who you are, that guilt comes back around if you steal. Even if you're stealing from a grocery store. It'd be so easy to swipe shit from the store every time I go. Stuff I need. It's like, God, it's like $20 for this little tiny thing. Yeah, I could put it in my pocket. But why don't I? Why don't we? Because we know how shitty it feels. But more, we look down on people who are thieves. And just like we look down on liars and cheats, right? Which is why I refuse to cheat at games, that kind of thing. So here I am tooting my own horn about being Mr. Honest, right? But that's not the point. I do have values and strengths. But God, I suck at paperwork. And man, I'm a fucking lazy bum sometimes. All Memorial Day weekend, I just sat around and watched TV. Oh, I cleaned out my car, did a few things, cleaned up a porch a little bit, or maybe that was the weekend before. But here's the thing. I have so many responsibilities to deal with that I get frozen sometimes, and I don't know how to deal with any of them. And I'm only mentioning this because in the same way, it can stress me out, and I can get, I learned to control my stress back in my 30s. I had severe anxiety. Like, I could feel it in my stomach, the butterflies in your stomach. Everybody knows the feeling. This was about 10 to 12 years ago when I first started my channel, and during that time I'd had a lot of stress because at one point I was on probation for mushrooms and I kept getting drug tested, and that added to my stress. But during that time I learned how to deal with it by learning a lot about esotericism, meditation, deep breathing, all these things. And ultimately nothing can really stop stress, because stress is something that tells us we need to get something done. So now when I have any type of stress, I just know it's really important. What I have learned to do is separate my circle of influence from my circle of concern. And this goes back to Hermetic wisdom and many different cultures. But I sometimes say that I'm more like Zen Buddhist than anything, that those are the principles that I respect the most. But really, it's esotericism, and especially when I really consider it, the exact same principles apply to Hermetic wisdom. And Hermetic wisdom is the knowledge from a couple thousand years ago that started with Hermes Trismegistus, which Trismegistus basically means, I believe, 3 times great, something like that. And it could have to do with Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It could have to do with the triangle, which is inside a circle. We have a square with a triangle and a circle and a square and a triangle, and they all represent different things within this, this knowledge, this ancient wisdom, which I've spent like 15, 20 years fascinated with. I've got tattoos of esoteric, these, symbol for earth and the chicken and the egg and the sun and the spiritual cross and a yin yang and all this shit, and a letter K7 for karma and my lucky number. But I did all this when I was like 14 or something. We got stick and poke. We got a hold of needles and ink, India ink, and just went to town because our friend had one. And around the same time, I tattooed hate on my knuckles, and maybe I'll tell a story about that one time. But I was a peaceful person, so it was kind of a bad choice of words. Just a bad time in my life because my father had passed and I was angry. And somebody else had one that said fear and I wanted to one-up him. So anyway, tattoos. The point is they represent kind of these, spiritual parts of ourself quite often. And back when I was 14, I was reading these books about, with all these symbols of astrology and mysticism, and this has continued on since then, and 24, 34, 44, so 35 years almost that I've been into this. But there was a huge period over the last 6 years where I stopped talking about it to anyone. There's two reasons. Number one, I hit a dead end, a point where I hadn't gotten past one important point, which was faith, belief, a true belief, not a belief, a knowledge. I won't go into this details because it's complicated, but it's kind of like people say, for example, if I were to apply it to religion, they say, well, do you believe in Jesus? You'd say no. And they say, well, you should, then you can be saved. And you'd say, well, okay, then I'll say I will. And they say, well, you have to really believe it. And you say, well, how can I do that if I'm not sure? They say, well, you have to have faith. I say, okay, I'm going to say I have faith. How do you know if I have faith? How do you know how much a person believes in something? But what I realized was, no matter what I wanted to learn, I realized I had to experience God directly in order for me to get past a hurdle. And God is not a religious God. God is the all, the everything. And there was a point where finally I was able to overcome that through the use of mixing a couple of compounds along with full darkness and using binaural beats, which are basically playing two different frequencies, one through each ear at different rates. So it'd be 317 hertz and then say 320 hertz. And supposedly it's supposed to align the hemispheres of your brain in some way. Very little research and study on this. This is something I've talked about. There's a lot of fucking bullshit out there about this. Just like scalar energy and any of this crap. I don't buy into the crystals crap. I believe in the intention, and that there are talismans. Whatever intention you have to have a true belief in this intention, which is difficult to have. I don't like the word belief, but here's the thing. I experienced God myself in a way I had previously, but finally was able to confirm it to myself. Not in a way of, speaking with God so much as feeling that things are okay and revisiting the realization that looking around at all this beauty, trees, these plants, these bushes, even when I'm driving down the freeway, even when I'm at work, looking at the bees and the ants and the flowers, something that comes so natural to me because it's so important to me. But after talking with so many people, I realize folks don't even fucking look down. Half the people walking through the park are staring at their phone. I'm sorry to be that old guy, but man, it's ridiculous. Because I heard my mom saying that to me last year, everybody's always down looking at their phone. I'm like, no, they're not. I mean, some people, but we always notice the extreme ones. No, every fucking person. Every time I walk through a store, anytime I do anything, people are walking along on their phone. And I realized a lot of the time I'm staring at my phone. I'm doing it right fucking now. Right? I can say, oh, I'm making a YouTube video. People need to hear what I have to say. No, I'm just wasting time like everyone else. But doing it in a way that I feel like I'm doing something important, maybe. But that's neither here nor there, as I like to say for some reason. I got off track on a rant. See what happens when you talk shit about everybody on their phone? But anyway, since I was young, had a fascination with personal development. I'm not going to say self-help, I hate that term. Personal development and rites of passage for men, trying to understand what it means to be a man, because I grew up during a time when my father and his father were raised to be men. My generation was raised to be meh, to put it lightly, right? Our parents just said, well, we don't want to be too strict like our parents were, so you guys figure it out. And I didn't realize this until later. I thought I was the only one. I lived in a place where everybody else's parents were pretty strict, but my parents just kind of let us do whatever we want. Sure, I got grounded a couple times and I just left anyway. What are they going to do? My father passed when I was 15. My mom had to deal with it. I don't blame them for anything. I think they did a great job. They were both great people, amazing people, and never hit me. They weren't verbally abusive or hateful. More than you can ask for with a lot of parents, right? So I grew up without any discussion about religion or politics in the household. It wasn't even a thing that came up. I was watching MTV when it came out, and that was it, you know. I'd watch Discovery Channel when it came out, back when they used to do like nature stuff that was true. But you know, it was kind of a novelty to watch these shows, and most of the time we actually had to sit around and have conversations. You know, we didn't have the same distractions until my dad got an Atari and we sat up playing Asteroids all night one night, and that was pretty fun. Next thing we know, we're getting a ColecoVision and I'm playing Jumpman Jr. And then we finally, you know, got a Nintendo down the road. Or maybe, I don't think we ever got one. My friend brought one over so we could play Duck Hunt and Mario Brothers or Metroid, but I couldn't afford very many games. So, I know, nostalgia, I'm just talking about the past. But these experiences taught me a lot about myself and other people that I was interacting with, and showed me that, you know, interacting with all the different people and being respectful of the differences that we had was just the norm. Like, for anybody today who thinks that, like, say that they think that they're fighting, let's say the extreme social justice warriors that think that they're fighting on behalf of others against, you know, hatred and hate speech and racism, right? I get that. Nobody wants to hear that shit. Nobody wants to hear people with, you know, saying hateful things against others. But there seems to be this belief with younger folks, you know, in their 20s or teens, that somehow they're fixing a problem that doesn't really need to be fixed, because the people who need to be fixed, you know, the worst of them out there, don't give a shit what you have to say. The rest of us, because there's an illusion put forth by the media, and this has always been true. But my point is that in the 80s and 90s, we weren't hateful or racist. We had black friends and Mexicans in the neighborhood, and everybody hung out together. As kids, we didn't give a shit what color you were. I mean, sure, we'd call each other's racist names once in a while, but we all did it in jest, and we could actually do that and be cool with it. And it's, you know, the world has been improving since my parents were kids, but it's also been falling apart. There's two things. Number one, we're losing the truth of who we are as young men and women who want to go out and challenge, and I'm not leaving anyone out. Yes, there are intersex people. I'm not going to get into that debate. But when we talk about most people that you encounter in your daily life, you say that most people are one sex or another, whether they identify as one sex or another. There are opposites, polar opposites, which I wouldn't say polar opposites, but rather a yin and yang, just like hot and cold, up and down, left and right. There's an opposite to everything. And within this, we find these beautiful aspects of being a woman, being a man. And the reason I'm saying this is because I grew up without any real teacher. I didn't have a father figure in my life because my father passed when I was 15. But the time I did spend with him, the things he did tell me, which I probably forgot most of it, but he was a poet and he liked to write poems, and he left a bunch of them behind in various writings. He went to Vietnam when he just got married to my mom, and it fucked him up. He wasn't even in serious battle, I don't believe, but he went to Cam Ranh Bay and saw enough to come back, you know, disturbed, and wrote a lot about it. He wrote a poem called The Barefoot Bitch about Vietnam, you know, and yeah, he hated it. Understandable. Vietnam sucks. But not the place, but the war, you know. It was a horrible thing the U.S. never should have done. You know, the whole Gulf of Tonkin and all the bullshit that we did to falsely go in on false premise. We've been doing this for a long time, but my dad suffered because of it, and we believe his cancer may have been caused by Agent Orange because it was carcinoma. So, you know, yay, hey, U.S. military, thanks for making burn pits, which my friend's brother, who's in his 40s, just died of cancer last year, brain cancer, which was probably from the burn pits when he was in Iraq. That's a side note. You got to protect our young men and women in war, but there's a reason why mostly men have historically been on the you know, on the front lines. There's a reason why men have the most dangerous jobs. There's a reason why men die younger because of those jobs and because of life stresses. That it's not about whining or complaining. It's about realizing that being a man is a risk, and that taking risks is in our genetic makeup. And I know I'm talking about men because most of you are men. I know I've looked, and I think I have maybe 1 out of 10 people who watch my channel are women, but I'm glad. I want more females to watch some of these videos about men because they get a better idea of what it's like to be a man and the difficulty faced. So, to backtrack here and go back to as I was growing up, my father took me hiking, took me out to Eastern Oregon, and we'd go on these hikes out in the desert. And one time, I was with him and my brother, my little brother, and I think I was about 11 or 12. He was like 9. We went way out to Eastern Oregon on the Nevada border, a place called the Trout Creek Mountains. It was like a 12-hour drive off paved front, you know, with like half of it off of paved roads. He loved to go to the middle of nowhere, and we got there. The first day seemed okay. We set up our tent by the creek, this one green strip in the desert, and then my dad got sick. He got really sick, and he was sick for like 2 or 3 days, and he was in the tent the whole time, basically delirious. And he told us, you know, be careful, don't go too far, basically. But here we are, young kids, we want to go explore. We jumped across the river, past this big ass snake, and up this hill, and we climbed this steep ass hill. I found an area where Native Americans had like worked, I don't know what tribe, but had worked some chert. I believe it was chert, some sort of a napped stone, but there was just chunks everywhere. I didn't know what it was. I just know it was different than the surroundings, so I took a bunch of them, sold them at a garage sale later, and the guy's like, these are artifacts, where'd you get them? And I don't recall exactly because it was in the middle of nowhere. We hiked up and down these canyons and on these rims, and you know, came back. My dad finally got better. Then on the way back, he puked up like this thing that was like a banana. It was the weirdest thing. We thought maybe it was a parasite, but that's gross, but neither here nor there, as I say. He taught me about being a man by taking me out when I was 11 years old, setting me up with a .303 British rifle, which was my grandfather's, because my grandfather was in World War II, and taught me how to shoot. And he set up a soda can, we shook it up, and put it on this rock, which was, I want to say it was about 300 yards away. But anybody who shoots knows that's total bullshit. That was a joke. I would say it's probably maybe 50 yards. Probably not even that. It was probably more like 30 yards. Definitely less, but around 100 feet probably. A good distance. And he showed me how to aim and how to hold it against my, you know, the stock against my shoulder. And I remember taking that shot and just watching that can explode. I think it was like first shot. If it wasn't first, it was second shot, but I was so proud of myself because I hit it dead center and the bottom all of the tin just folded and the top shot up like 8 feet and then came back down and crashed on the ground. And I was like, cool, I shot something. I shot a gun. And I'm only telling you this because I was raised around firearms. With firearms available in my house, my mom was a reserve cop for a bit. She had a .357 revolver. My dad had a .303 and a .32. I don't know what else because, you know, we didn't go that often. A .22, some other things. But even after he passed, I had those just sitting on my wall, hanging out in my room. One of my friends stole it. Let's just say I had some tweaker friends, and we used to party and go out, and we'd hang out in my room. I had people steal all kinds of shit from me, you know, family heirlooms. I didn't know any better. I was stupid, and I let people. We were in our late teens and early 20s, And yeah, I got ripped off by some stuff, but eventually I had a few pot plants that I was growing, and I got somebody ratted me out to save their own ass. Loose lips sink ships. But I got busted. The cops came to my house. They searched my house, and sounds like a dog fight. That's a bummer. So anyway, I got busted. The cops searched my place, took my guns, and never got them back. The entire time that I had those firearms, I was a pretty irresponsible youth. I never once considered taking those out and hurting anybody with them. And the point of this is that there's a major misconception that access to firearms is the problem. When I was a kid, I never once ever occurred to me to take a firearm and harm somebody with it. It was the last thing on my mind. We have a cultural problem with firearms. But if you raise your kids properly, they're not going to pull your gun and take it out and hurt people with it. It's a simple concept that I need to really address, because I consider myself a rational liberal. You know, I definitely see the point with some conservative arguments, and I don't shy away from that, because I don't pick a side. And I try to stay away from politics completely, but unfortunately having opinions on topics makes you politically oriented. So, you can't avoid it. Anyway, on the conservative side, there is this kind of push to bring back being a man, right? And then there is this almost a direct, response to it of guys, really weak men, let's just say. Now look, I'm a scrawny motherfucker. I'm skinny. You better believe I can fucking hold my own in a fight, and I'm a lot stronger than I look. Because I'm 6'3", I'm skinny, but my muscle is dense. I got them Viking genes. But yeah, I get my ass kicked by a dude with bigger muscles. That's not what being a man is. The point is, that's part of being a man. And you can't ignore that factor. That being tough is part of being a man. You don't have to be physically strong. You just have to be tough. You have to be able to protect yourself, defend yourself. But even more importantly, defend your family. You may be weak and be okay with it. But what if one of family members in danger? If you have to protect somebody? The thing is, we've lost this kind of my brother's keeper attitude. And I was thinking about this, I am my brother's keeper, or am I my brother's keeper, is a term, a biblical term, but it goes back further. Of course, they all do. And refers to protecting those around you, all people, as much as you can. And especially protecting the weaker and those in need. And it's something I always try to do. I hate it when people look down on others or treat them like shit. I never talk down on somebody else, ever. It's just disrespectful and wrong, I will tell people how I feel about them if they're being assholes, but they've got to throw the first punch, right? If you have a different opinion, I don't care. That's not my problem. I have no problem with that. That's the beauty. We should have different opinions. But there's this weakness now where everybody seems to be a victim. And this is happening with a lot of, men and women. But, if men play the victim and they become whiny little bitches, that term, whiny little bitches, is not meant to be offensive. But here I am, saying, oh, it's not meant to be offensive. Well, yeah, maybe it is if you're a whiny little bitch. Don't be, because guys need to be able to do guy stuff. And I made a video about this, and it's funny because I figured somebody would talk shit. Like, oh, God, you're just ignorant man, there's been a movement against men, right? Against, rather, the idea of being a man. And because of this, there was a toxic masculinity idea that came out in the last 10 years. And I believe there is toxic masculinity. You take guys like Andrew Tate, you're not going to learn a goddamn thing from that guy that's going to benefit you long term. That's not, and playing the long game is the key here. It's about how do you act that you'll still be able to act when you're 60, 70, 80. A lot of people don't think about it this way, and I think it's crucial. If you're behaving a certain way, can you keep that up for the rest of your life if you chose to? And I think that that's a great gauge for how we're doing. Because there are times when we're consuming too much of something, maybe, or we're partying too hard, and we're like, we couldn't keep this up forever. And that's okay to go out and splurge and have fun and do crazy shit, but don't make it who you are, right? The Andrew Tates of the world are going to eventually have to realize that women, good women, will never put up with that shit or see them as desirable. Let me give you an example of what I mean as a metaphor. I've thought about this with people that wear brand name clothing, really expensive stuff. The kind of people who will be cold outside, right? Or, they'll go out in a snowstorm wearing their Tommy Hilfiger, shirt, but not cover up because they want people to see the logo. Now, this is something that happens because everybody I know, including myself, has bought some new clothes that they were willing to wear, even if it wasn't that comfortable, because it looked cool. That I understand. But the difference is it's a brand name, a tag, as opposed to being unique. This has a point here. Because we've lost our authenticity about being original. Now everybody's just based on trends. Trends are fucking gross, I don't care about wearing some other dude's label, and it's especially lame when it's showing just how much money you have or that you're willing to spend on clothes. But anyway, I was thinking about the kind of people who wear that shit and saying, oh man, well, why do they do that? Well, because they're trying to impress people. And then I thought further on it, and I realized, well, what kind of people are impressed by that? It's like, okay, well, the kind of people who also think that that's cool. And I said, do I know anybody who would think that that's impressive? No. Well, therefore, it has no bearing on my life whatsoever. If you found a community that works for you, and here's the thing, that's whatever you want to be. It's totally your business. And I love that about the world. But I do think it's important to remember what kind of people are you attracting by your attitude and your lifestyle and the way you act. In other words, I don't attract very many people to my life because, like, new friends and acquaintances that I want to hang with, because usually they're not very deep. Most people are pretty shallow, and that's okay. It's hard to find like-minded folks. That's why I have a YouTube channel. That's why I can bring people into my channel who can relate and have some sort of a connection with what I have to say, so we can bounce back and forth. Many of you have been with me for years. That's fucking awesome. You're like friends, I mean, you know more about me than I'd ever know about you, but we can all meet up for coffee sometime. If I could get everybody on my channel together, I'd fucking go have some like get together barbecue. It'd be fucking awesome. We could have some great conversations. I might put acid in the punch, so don't bring your kids. But I wouldn't do that. Or would I? Anyway, I'd like to see people be more comfortable with who they are rather than who they expect other people to think they are. And this is, I guess, my whole point here. If you can be authentic and original and do your own thing, then you can be comfortable with that. Then that can never be taken away from you, right? You'll never have to keep up with the fads. You'll never have to get the newest and the greatest phone, clothes, accessories, whatever it might be. We're very wrapped up in consumerism, and I don't even like talking about it because to me, it's so obvious that consumerism is bullshit. But so many people are wrapped up in it. Every day when I go to work, I drive down Beaverton in Oregon there, and I drive down Canyon Road, and it's like where all the car dealerships are. I remember I was coming home today, and there were 2 trucks parked in the middle of the road in the center lane area with their ramps down, delivering like a couple dozen new cars to the dealerships. And these are like Lexus, Mercedes, BMW, shit like that. I'm like, there's people in there all the time buying brand new cars because they really have to have a new car. And I realized, hey, if you can afford it, so be it. I guess maybe I feel like a lot of folks buy luxury cars as a status symbol because it's not about dependability, obviously. You can buy a brand new Honda that'll last you even longer and be cheaper to fix. A rational person would do that, but somebody who drives clients around wants to show they have money. But by spending more money on something, it's not showing you have money, it's showing you're dumb with money. You see what I mean? That's the way I feel about, fancy clothes and jewelry too. Okay, it's like the way, the exorbitant amount of money people spend on like gold chains back in the day, in the Beastie Boys day. I remember being like, even as a kid, like, what are these guys doing? I know 99% of those chains are fake, but for the few that are real, it's like, why? What's the point? I mean, I guess gold holds its value. It's a good investment, but that's not why people are buying it. Otherwise, they'd wear costume jewelry, knockoff clothing, and drive a Honda because they wouldn't care. I guess you could buy a Honda and put like a Lexus symbol on it. Nobody will know the difference, right? So I guess I've gone off and probably just separated myself from a chunk of the audience because I don't want anybody who has money and buys nice shit to feel offended by this, because that's not my intention. You probably don't fall into the category of the extreme types I'm talking about. There is one final category, the ones who have to tell you how much money they make and brag about their wealth. Those are like the Andrew Tates of the world, and that's why he's a perfect example of everything wrong with manhood, like this illusion of manhood. I want to leave on one final note, and it has to do with rites of passage. Kids need to be able to have rites of passage. Young men need to be able to transfer into adulthood. And I should have done this with my oldest. He's 29 now. And we did have kind of a rite of passage, but let's just say it didn't go as planned. However, it's never too late. Most importantly, we have to feed the young men the right information so they can develop into the best selves they can be. You may be a procrastinator as well. You might end up having a lot of shortcomings. You may be anxious. We all have problems. I feel like some guys look down on themselves way too much over the stupid trivial shit. And you gotta have a stiff upper lip and just fucking deal with it. Honestly. Just deal with it. It's just how it is, We all have to deal with it. Don't be afraid to talk to people. And, if you feel like you don't have anybody in your life, you're welcome to leave a comment or shoot me an email if you want to. I try to respond to everything, but it's very difficult because I read every comment, but I don't always have the time to respond to everything because I got to get up at 6 in the morning and go to work and do all that shit. And that's draining as fuck with traffic and construction. It's funny, that's another thing, that working hard is something that shouldn't be overlooked as important for men. Every guy should be able to dig a hole in the ground, but also be able to plant some flowers or a garden, which I need to get around to. So just be the best man you can be, whatever that may be. So fist bump, more power to y'all. Peace out, and I'll talk to you next time. If this is your first video of mine, I also have another channel that I do carpentry, and another one that's called Thoughts, and that's where I do random shit. And I found another channel I forgot I had. It's called Forest Walker, Forrest Walker, and there's only like 50 subscribers, but it's where I do my nature hikes and stuff, and I'm gonna start adding more this year. And I have a podcast called 15-Minute Free Thinking. All the shit's down below and all that stuff, so if you like it, hit the like and all that stuff. And if you want to donate, I have a Patreon, Carpo719. And I think beyond that, that's about all I gotta say. I better man up and get some shit done now. I'll see y'all tomorrow. This is a long one, huh?